When the whole industry was racing to just get out there, do something with AI, what was your first instinct? Was it to jump in or slow down?
It was to be measured. The problem with the FOMO, you end up with these very surface level demos and proofs of concepts that don't necessarily get you deeper into what's been happening within your own business.
I'm seeing a lot of that right now. People trying to race to create this awesome AI tool. They realize they're not at the end, they're at the beginning. Hi, Lynn. How are you?
I'm doing well, Shala. How have you been?
I am doing good. I did just fly in from New York. Funny enough, I visited New York Tuesday for the first time ever. I'm more of a West Coast person, so I just never
Hmm.
made it to New York. But I went to Commvault. They had their Shift conference
Hmm.
and talked a lot about AI and data recovery and stuff like that. So I'm a little tired, but I'm good because I get to talk to you today. So
Awesome. Yes, I also came in from a late night flight, and but I was so excited to do this because I just love hearing some of your ideas and what you've been doing as well. It's a really incredibly fluid space that we're all living in right now, and it doesn't matter if you're a technologist or not. It's real time and real live and always changing.
exactly. So yes, I am super excited to have you on the show. Welcome to Gifted Lane. And this is also super exciting because you get to be my first guest under my new format and the new vibe of Gifted Lane, which really reflects just where I am personally in life right
Hmm.
now, which is I realize my interior design language is Japandi and Wabi Sabi. So making things look very simple and
Hmm.
comfy, that's what I'm all about these days. So even with life, I just like, slowing things down and living with both intent and purpose.
Hmm.
And, I've learned that simple is harder than chaos.
Well, it's a lot like that Mark Twain quote, if I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. It's very much harder to edit than it is to sprawl.
Exactly. And so, yeah, welcome to the new set. It's all
Great.
about cozy, comfy vibes here. And one of the first things I want to do is introduce everyone to you.
Hmm.
So, first thing that comes to mind is for me, like your title just blows my mind and is so interesting to
Yeah.
me. So, your title, AI Center of Excellence Vice President, blows my mind. And I was kind of wondering if you could walk us through
Hmm.
what is your day to day like?
Yeah. Well, when you asked a question as we were first prepping, what is the center of excellence and what does
Yeah.
excellence mean? And in all of these transitions that we've seen over the years, in not just technology, but as your practices change, it can be very difficult to help people transition from what was to what will be the new practice. And so a center of excellence is really focused on demystifying and simplifying what is that new thing that's coming and how does it actually benefit and where do you use it or where do you not use it. And so what we've really focused on is there's the story of what it can do and what it could be, AGI, and it's going to be
Yeah.
super intelligence. But then there's a less intimidating version of it of how do you get started and what do you need to know and how can we help our customers. And so that's really what the focus is. It's on these transformational capabilities that are so new and so mind blowing, which AI is completely mind blowing. Um, they need some people to lean in and really bring others along the journey in a very deliberate way, so that you're not panicking, but you're also not resisting and ignoring.
I like that. I like that
Hmm.
big time. Now, here's a fun question that I like to ask.
Mhm.
because I find it fun when I hear friends and family try to explain it to me. So, what do your family or friends think you do? Is it anywhere close to what you do?
I don't think it's anywhere close to what I do. They think that I am creating all of this technology and that I am the one that is rolling my sleeves up and doing all the programming. And the reality is, I'm the person that is pulling together what others are building, and making sure that it's highlighted and doing a lot of connection. It's funny because even with things like AI, the amount of human glue to even find what is necessary to make decisions, to move forward, to get people enlisted, to actually execute on something, it doesn't change. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of people. And a lot of my friends and family think, oh, you're just a tech head, you're just an engineer, because they don't know how much human is showing up when you're an engineer.
Exactly. And for me, the classic is, so I am a cloud solutions architect and a DevOps engineer.
Hmm.
To my family and to my friends, because like my core set of friends are not techies. The ones
Hmm.
that I just organically met like back in school and stuff like that, they do not work in tech.
Hmm.
So friends, family, they simplify it to, oh, she works in computers. And if their printer acts up or their phone's acting up, Charlotte can fix it. And I'm like, no, I can't.
Right.
Like,
Right. Not that kind of a, yeah, exactly.
exactly. That's always the classic. What's that one part of your job that still makes you smile and light up when you talk about it?
The one part of my job that makes me smile and light up is I've always been a champion of some of the engineers that have a very difficult time explaining their ideas and what the value is, because a lot of the decision makers are not technologists, and even some of the tech CEOs are really not that technical. And so what I've always loved is being able to champion for others. The other thing that I love is cross team collaboration. And, a lot of big organizations, they've tended to be matrices. Maybe that will be less so in the future. But the reality is, if you can have a project where everybody has their piece, you're all pulling forward and everybody wins, that's what I love. That people collaboration and making a difference and opening up market opportunities that nobody thought was there against all odds. And you're doing it together. I think that as engineers, we don't necessarily lean towards, oh, this is group thing. But when you look at what's the most rewarding projects, it's always pulling others along and making things happen together.
Okay, I love that. And you are selling me on seeing if I want to get more involved. Because funny enough, like last month, I just realized the employer where I work, we have an AI center of excellence. Which
Hmm.
just like, okay, what is that? I didn't know this existed. But what you're explaining to me, what you love about your job, what makes you light up, is what I love about mine, is what I love about DevOps, as well as being a solution architect. Because day in, day out, most of my job, 90% of it is getting the engineers hands on keyboard, doing the coding, building the things,
Hmm.
and the project managers and operations folks, and even the DevOps engineers understanding each other. So I
Yeah.
end up being a bridge where I have to know a lot about a lot
Yeah.
and then simplify it to, or not even simplify it, but refactor the messaging for the audience that I'm telling it to, and I love
Hmm.
that a lot. And I love all the different ways that I get to work across so many different teams,
Hmm.
and the way we have our feedback loop. I learn from them, they learn from me.
That's right.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might go knock on my boss's door and be like, "Hey, so the Center of Excellence, what are
Can
we
I
doing?"
work with that? Yeah. What are we doing? And how can I get involved? And how can I start working? in that context.
Exactly.
It should be a safe place to experiment. It should be a safe place to roll your sleeves up and really get to know how can you use this new technology to make everything that you do even better than what it has been. Better, faster, more effective, get more done.
Exactly. And that is such my messaging. That's why the moment I started reading your articles, I found out we were gonna sit down and have this chat. I was just so for it because I'm like, I feel like we're on the same wavelength,
Yeah.
so I love it.
That's and it's a relief, right? What is it? You know, there's a quote about friendship where we all need to have those connections where we go, aha, and you
Hmm.
too, just like me. We're seeing things similarly. It's such a relief for the human experience.
Yes, yes. And that's something like also just both personally and with my work life that I'm getting so into these days. And that is taking time to actually build deeper
Hmm.
connection
Hmm.
and making sure to not like edit myself and actually just be in places where I have belonging.
Hmm.
And so that is so felt what you just said. When the whole industry was racing to do something with AI,
Right.
just get out there, do something with AI. What was your first instinct? Was it to jump in or slow down?
It was to be measured, which isn't necessarily jumping in or slowing. It's selectively jumping in. And the reason for that is because the interesting part about do something with AI, fear of missing out, everybody's going to lose their jobs, don't let it be you. You know, you end up with these very surface level demos and proofs of concepts that don't necessarily get you deeper into what's been happening within your own business. And so, you know, there's been a couple examples that I've used over time where if you just take it down to the brass tacks, it's that there were low noise signals. There were just low fidelity signals in the business data, and because people were moving so fast and so superficially, you didn't necessarily take the time to really dig deeper and go, where's the correlation in this? And is there a trend? Is there something that we can really start removing the hassle factor for people? Can we get ahead of things instead of just reacting and waiting for these alerts? And so the problem with the FOMO and do faster is the strength of AI and the technology is go deeper, understand the insights. And so I felt like what would happen is exactly what we've seen the end of this year with some of the studies from MIT or McKinsey. You know, essentially there was a lot of superficial deployment and then a lot of disappointment because
Yeah,
they weren't really looking at my business processes. How can I reinvent this and really unearth opportunities that have been missed when I was just moving as fast as possible at the broadest scale?
correct. And even with myself and with my work, I feel like FOMO is so huge. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's just so much of, oh, we need to be doing something with AI. We need to be doing something with AI. And so it lends to people trying to race to create this awesome AI tool and get
Mm-hmm.
like all the accolades and stuff. And what I'm seeing happening is by the time they are thinking they're ready to push that new AI
Mm-hmm.
tool to production, they realize they're not at the end, they're at the beginning because they end up having to scrap it and go, wait, what were we building for? What was the
Mm-hmm.
point? Who's this servicing? Oh, this isn't scaling. Like all
Yeah.
those kind of things. And I'm seeing a lot of that right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because AI can generate its own data, it can generate its own code, and there's a lot of questions. I'm sure you saw this
Yeah.
when you were in New York. Questions around security. What? How do you secure things when it's not identity, when it's machine created? How do you track the provenance of the data?
Yep.
And so there's a lot of speed up or slow down to speed up questions in industries that they don't have a pass. they can't just run fast and break things. They actually have to not break things while they're running fast.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm just curious if you have any personal experience inside of a large organization that maybe you've witnessed
Mm-hmm.
some of that FOMO kicking in and how maybe that kind of played out, or if it did play out, how did it get rolled back? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, hold on, let's take a breath, let's think about this and try again.
It's fascinating because I've seen both extremes. I've seen companies that have gone really wild and then ended up, exposing their tokens or exposing their code or exposing things that are security that shouldn't have been exposed.
Hmm.
I've seen the opposite extreme. Like in some cases, I'm living the opposite extreme, which is um, very mature manufacturing companies, they put inhibitors and limiters. So
Hmm.
you have a difficult time implementing and experimenting just because there's so many different ways to assign policy and ways to assign access. And so I've seen it both ways. Um, I think that it really comes down to if you're looking just at security in your traditional sense, as opposed to security leveraging these new tools and figuring out how do I use AI as a buddy, as opposed
Yeah.
to look at AI as a hostile actor. I think that we're still transitioning through that. We're still figuring out how we do this in regulated industries, but it's not an option to sit around. So building in those capabilities right from the very start, thinking through how do we show provenance of the data? How do we show that we've secured the workflows enough? Um, I think that it's a lot more transparency. It needs to be transparency in the right areas.
And then how about this? What does it actually look like once a company gets past that
Mm,
panic FOMO stage from AI curiosity to AI capability? Have you
mhm.
seen that play out and what has that looked like?
Hmm. I've seen most people in the capability space, quite frankly, and that I would say the AI natives, the new startups, they don't have any rules that they need to abide by. And so it happens every technology transition where you've got people that can run really fast and then
Hmm.
it turns out their technology isn't something that can be usable for mature businesses. So there's an ebb and flow in that. I think that the AI capability for natives is really AI is built into all of the workflows, and you can just have it working for you um, more autonomously. For companies that are trying to embed AI in their workflows, they're finding that um, sometimes the change management policies get in the way, right? Nobody likes to change disaster recovery. No one wants to talk about, how they're going to manage through outages. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot more considerations when you've been operating. Where I've seen things work in a capability space is, like the natural language processing example that I gave from Intel manufacturing. Um,
Hmm.
that didn't affect any mature workflows. That was an additive capability that said, hey, let's look at unstructured data and see if there's some reuse in it that can benefit the core. And needle in a haystack or unconventional use cases tend to be the ones that allow mature enterprises to shift a capability faster. They're just not going to do it everywhere all at once.
Nice. And funny that you mentioned that. So the NLP example,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say you did a direct case study when I was reading
Mm-hmm.
Finding Value with AI Automation when I read that
Mm-hmm.
article. And yeah, I've loved how you talked about how using NLP and then, in particular with regard to failure mode and effects
Mm-hmm.
analysis, you mentioned that in that case, they were able to turn months of analysis into minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. So I think, there was like the bigger story there, which I think you just dived into a little bit just now. But yeah, those are kind of the things that I always find interesting where I want to hear more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like the value tends to live in the work processes. Like, how does
Hmm.
it make me work more efficiently, faster, safer,
Right.
those kind of things.
And what was so interesting about that is, we have a lot of discussion right now about AI as therapy chatbots and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What's really fascinating is that example with natural language processing was effectively looking at sentiment in a way, kind of like a therapist would, right? To figure out
Nice.
what a human wasn't really willing to say, hey, my intuition is telling me something's off, my intuition is telling me something's off, but they're logging it in their language. And so the AI was able to unearth things that either the humans were burying or just didn't have enough time to sit down and think deliberately. Why is this feeling so weird? Why is this machine
Yeah.
so frustrating? So it's just really fascinating how, in that case, that application was unearthing what humans intuitively knew, but just couldn't quite put their finger on.
And now it's making me think out loud. I'm wondering, in that realm of AI, how many people, and there's probably people who pay good money to go see therapists,
Hmm.
right? Like a
Hmm.
physical person who's trained, all these kind of things. I wonder how many of them are able to talk to AI and say the things they would want to say to their therapist, but maybe they don't say to their
Hmm.
therapist because they still feel like maybe there's judgment or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have me curious about that.
Yeah.
The way you phrase that, I'm just like, you know what? There's probably people more willing to talk to AI and figure out their internal
Yeah.
storms versus talk to a person.
Or AI might be able to create inferences
Hmm.
on things that are a little bit more subtle than what a human might notice, except in a very
Exactly.
long pattern of interactions.
So, in a space like financial services where risk, compliance, and regulation live in every sentence there, but there's also that pressure to hurry up and innovate, how do you integrate AI responsibly in
Hmm.
that environment?
Well, I think it's a human AI partnership. It's not necessarily just complete automation and autonomy, because the accountability systems within those regulated industries mean somebody signs off on it, no matter what generated it. And so,
Yeah.
it's they used to call it human in the loop. It's human AI human. It's AI for brainstorming or a research assistant. And so, like, automated research assistants, so that the humans can then say, oh, we're going to go action that. Now, there's some fintech companies that are much more aggressive than that. But again, when a human is the one who's accountable and has to sign things, you've got to have that
Mhm.
partnership back and forth. And it's really just, what is the AI better at versus what the human is accountable for. You can't say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the AI, as much as you'd
I
like
was
to.
I'm right. That got a giggle out of me because that is very true. Like, well, I didn't do it. AI did it. Go
Yeah.
after AI. Oh no. So that also makes me think. So one of the talks I did here at the Shift conference, I think, yeah, that was just yesterday.
Mhm.
There was a Dr. Ramon Chaudhry, who gave a talk on the ethical pathways to innovation and trust.
Mhm.
And she talked about human in the loop. And
Mhm.
that was actually my first time hearing that term. And so hearing you say it just now, it just makes it come back full circle for me. And it also leads me to the question, going back to AI and human partnership, how do you make sure AI becomes a partner in governance instead of a
Mm.
liability?
Yeah. It's interesting because I believe AI can be really effective at risk frameworks. One of the frameworks that has been bantered about is the NIST framework for some of the governance. And it's interesting in that it's structured and it's well thought out. The challenge is that I don't believe that it's ready for AI operated systems, because you heard at your conference that use AI to help with cybersecurity issues, because cybersecurity issues are so fast because they're
Yep.
automated. So it's like this escalation. Um, so I don't think that the industry is there yet, but the guardrails are fairly static, and this is a very dynamic environment. And so I think it's the next wave of innovation in terms of enterprise AI capabilities. A
Nice.
very rich research domain.
You've kind of hinted at this a few beats back. I imagine you've seen a number of hype cycles in
Mhm.
tech. How do you keep a sense of calm and clarity through them and not
Mhm.
fall into like the FOMO?
Mm. You know, it's not easy, but the pattern has always been understanding that it's a technology, understanding that it's a transformation, and also being okay with not having all the answers. The other tech transformations or tech transitions, um, you know, people had to sell a business plan or a vision to get funding, but that's more of a hypothesis because we really don't know how things are going to turn out. Like,
Right.
you would have never known how Uber would have turned out. You never knew how
No.
Airbnb would have turned out. You wouldn't have expected those to be really legitimate businesses. And so I
Or
think that,
Twitch.
or Twitch, exactly, exactly. Watch somebody play video games and comment. Um, and so I think that we have to approach it with humility and say, here are some areas that we think that this can really make a huge difference for business and individuals and users of these technologies, and recognize that it's a foundational layer when you have these horizontal technologies, and the application of it will come later. So holding loosely our opinions of what the final answers are going to be and what the final opportunity is going to look like, um, difficult to do when you're doing fundraising, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it is the reality of how all of these transformations go forward. So jumping in, rolling your sleeves up, getting to know how this could transform or change your workflows, I think that that's really the main thing, is just don't be afraid, jump in.
Nice. And that also brings me back to when I first was asking the question, when AI started coming up the way that it did in the masses, did you like jump in or slow down? I was definitely one of the people who jumped in. I did
Yeah.
it cautiously, but it
Hmm.
was definitely just like, oh, I'm all in.
Yeah.
There was no gas, there was no brake, there was no brake pedal for me.
Nice.
So here's another question. How do you personally view the current moment of AI?
Mm. It is not slowing down, you know, and
No.
I think that I think we're definitely in the messy middle of this transformation, where the technologies may not be exactly where we were hoping them to be, but companies are making those transitions anyways. Um, and so we're going to be stumbling through it for a little while in terms of acceleration. I think the other thing that's interesting is so much of it is centered in one part of one country in the world. And the question is really,
Yeah.
how do we diffuse? How do we make sure that it reflects other cultures, that it reflects other opportunities, that it reflects other power and cooling realities. Um, and so I think that we're transitioning a little bit on the most high-end use cases. We really haven't even scratched the surface on the practical, simple start here, and then it's like a soft entry into the big
Yeah.
use cases.
Agreed. So when you think about reliability at enterprise scale, what
Mm.
does that mean beyond uptime or performance? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think one of them comes down to, the answer is going to be the answer is the same answer. And so, like, for example, financial reporting, you probably shouldn't use ChatGPT. Like, because Wall Street is kind of interested in, you shouldn't be creative with your financial and earnings reports, right? Um, and so it really comes down to where are you using these generative capabilities? Now,
Mhm.
the reality is there's so many other types of AI, like machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, computer vision are all very mature. And so they tend to get overlooked because we're so focused on these generative use cases. Um, and they're more deterministic, whereas Gen AI is more probabilistic. And I think that's the other thing is really understanding how do you match um, the determinism that's necessary in the output
Yeah.
with the right technology. And then you can go even further than that. Take the technology and what math algorithms do we need to run, and then really figure out, all right, what does that run on? What implements that the best in terms of types of processing? So I think it's not a simple answer. I wish, I think a lot of people wish it was a simple answer and you could
Yeah.
cookie cutter and headline it.
Yeah. Um, I don't see how that's possible though.
Hmm.
It would
Right.
be tough. I don't, I have no idea how we would get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, Shala. I mean, if I can turn it around, what did you
Yeah.
do when you were jumping in terms of AI and just I'm all in?
So let me see. Let me think back. I'm literally thinking back to when I got to start using Chat GPT. I forget, like, was it Chat GPT 2 or 1 or
Hmm.
something? It was before it got rolled out to the
Hmm.
masses, right? And so if I think about my journey from then to now, when I first started using it, I would do stuff like, because yes, I'm on social media, I was like, hey, who's skipped a lane? I'll do something like that and see if it
Hmm.
could find me. And it did.
Hmm.
And then I remember I started doing things like what I would normally type into like a Google search.
Hmm.
So maybe I was working on some piece of code, or probably more than likely working on a piece of code, and I'm just like, hey, ChatGPT, what's the right syntax for this
Hmm.
Python thing I'm trying to do? Something like that.
Hmm.
And basically, it's not trying to create code for me. It would just like regurgitate whatever it found on the internet. I think it was what year
Yeah.
2023 or whatever that
Hmm.
it had
Hmm.
access to. And so it'll try to just spit right back out to me what I would go find on Google, like, oh, the proper syntax is you need to, use like single quotes or something like
Right.
that, right?
Hmm.
Compared to today,
Yeah.
today, what I do is I use ChatGPT to straight up lose, at this point, 32 pounds. So,
What? Wow.
right. So the way I did that was, first I had ChatGPT. I was just like typing to it. I was just like, "Hey, I want to get more lean and toned. Here's my height, my age,
Hmm.
my current weight, my problem areas." And I was like, here's things I struggle with, which is eating sugar. I love sugar. I
Hmm.
love noodles. So what it had me do was, of course, cut out sugar, cut out noodles, and it was
Right.
like, if you just have to have noodles, I wouldn't say, I don't know the proper pronunciation, but it looks like konjac or kojak noodles. So
Hmm.
they're these like I forget what plant they're from, but they're like these glassy noodles
Hmm.
that your body does not digest, so
Hmm.
it just goes away.
Right.
And so it was like, if you're going to have a noodle dish, use those
Hmm.
because you're not gonna,
Hmm.
rack up any calories and stuff like that. And so basically, I'm to the point now where I realize the way I like to move through life, whether I'm learning something, trying to achieve something, meet a goal,
Hmm.
whatever, I like to gamify it. I'm
Got
a
it.
gamer at the
Yeah.
end of the day. I love a challenge. And
Hmm.
so there's this one anime called Solo Leveling.
Hmm.
I love that anime. And so I can do things like, hey, ChatGPT, I want to, knock off like another 15 pounds, or I want to make sure I'm
Hmm.
like targeting visual fat.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I'll be like, let's gamify that using the solo leveling anime concept. And so, anyways,
Hmm.
basically every day it gives me challenges
Hmm.
where me target the things that I want. So honestly,
Wow.
ChatGPT tells me what to eat every day. So
Yeah.
I don't count calories or
Yeah.
anything. It tells me how much protein to take
Hmm.
in. how much to eat for the day. And I've done a lot of working with personal trainers and
Mhm.
nutritionists to know
Mhm.
that what is telling me, I'm like, yeah, those are the right targets. That makes sense. This doesn't
Yeah.
seem crazy. It's gotten to the point where, let's say this morning I made like 2 pancakes and 2 pieces of bacon. I'll snap a picture of that. It
Mhm.
knows I like to use a certain pancake mix. It already knows that. And it'll go, oh, okay, you did 2 of these pancakes and these bacons. This is about X amount of calories. You're like X amount short of protein for the day. So make sure you have like a
Mhm.
protein shake. So anyway, that's what I
Yeah.
did. And I just over cooking
Wow.
2
It's a pretty impressive. Yeah.
So that's how I'm using it. Where
Mhm.
I just jumped in. I also jumped into Waymos when they kind of first started rolling
Yeah.
out. So
All
there you
right. There I go.
go. So let's see. And what? How about you? Like, what has your journey been with using the different AI tools?
I've done a lot of the chat GPT in terms of research assistant, Copilot,
Mhm.
really like their research assistant. And, working with some teams that developed analysts. So basically we have this data structure and query with Copilot until you can get
Yeah.
effectively a little research assistant. And sometimes you have to Teams call it. So that's, that gets a little interesting when you're talking with an AI. Um, but most of it has been in the work context, quite frankly.
Nice.
Although in the personal context, I play around with different models because I like the specificity of Claude. I like the creativity of ChatGPT.
Right.
Um, you know, and so I know a lot of people were playing with everything, and now they centered in on one model type. Um, and I'm still in the play around mode.
Same. Same.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that I come across and realize just within like my own like personal circles or chatting with different people, in general, that we all use it differently. And how you prompt them, I think, dictates a lot of the usefulness people
Hmm.
get out of it. I'm
Yeah.
seeing that differ wildly.
Hmm.
Like, and I thought about that because you mentioned about using ChatGPT creatively for creative things,
Hmm.
and that's what I find myself saying so much because people are just like, "Well, how can you like ChatGPT? Like, it's terrible," and I'm like, "How are you using it?"
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's like I'm trying to like code something. I was like, okay, for coding, I like to use Windsor.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, if it's something I'm doing like creative brainstorming, stuff like that, or losing weight, I'll use
Yeah.
ChatGPT,
Right.
and there's just so many tools out there. And
Hmm.
I don't think, me personally, I haven't found a single AI tool that does all the things great.
Right.
And
Right.
so you end up having like just this giant toolbox of all these AI tools
That's
is
right.
where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty normal. I do know some people who are, diehard chat GPT, but for the most part, I see a lot of mix and match.
Yeah, I have to mix and match. Just like I use both Windows and PC. I can't
Hmm.
just use one or the other
Right. Right.
personally. So that leads me to, have you seen a moment where an automation win changed how teams thought about AI? Where they went from skeptical to believers, where you know, something positive
Hmm.
happened to where they're just like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah. Well, I've seen one that I personally love, and it's I've seen it in a lot of different cases, whether it's insurance or whether it's audits. It's just such a grind for people to go in and really try and compare what
Mhm.
is submitted versus the data that backs up the submission or the claim. And so I think that people could just get used to a certain amount of grind with that. And when they see what AI can do in terms of pulling that unstructured data out and really doing a comparison on, well, does the car grill here match the car grill there, and the
Yeah.
sound of the engine and things like that, or is this hotel receipt really a hotel? You know, I mean, no, humans don't want to go off and search on that. And so I think that in deploying things like that, a lot of people that have been legal or audit have been looking at that going, you know, I don't think I can use this. But then they
Mm,
realize it's again, it's making observations, and then the human in the loop can actually make the final decision. So they're not having to do the grind on the data comparisons. They're really just getting something that can unearth subtle data points that they might have missed themselves if they hadn't really just ground down to the very, very low level details. So I think that it's those kinds of use cases where you realize, oh, wait, I could get a research assistant with Copilot. Oh, wait,
yep.
I don't have to go look up URLs of hotels. Oh, you know, so it's that stuff that human brains don't really love doing, that
Hmm.
AI really loves doing. And I think that as people see that that can be a relief factor for them, that's where they really, the light bulbs go on.
That makes
And those are
sense.
very practical. It's practical use cases. I think some of the more esoteric use cases, it's harder to have people change their minds just because they don't quite get their head around how did that change happen or how would that change make a difference.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. And how would you get them to see, I guess, the difference in that regard?
Solving
That would be,
unsolvable problems, you know, if AI can solve fusion or
yeah,
fission, you know, maybe
yeah, yeah, yeah.
coming up with new energy sources that actually turn out to really be effective. It's that, I think it's that innovation side. It's that essence of finding core research that nobody else has found. I think that that's where people just say, I'm not sure I understand it because they don't really understand that deep science as well. You know, maybe AI unlocking quantum computing, um,
Yeah,
just because there's some really hard problems there. There's really hard problems of, you know, error rates and running above 0 degrees Kelvin and so many aspects of that have some really challenging questions that are unanswered. So can AI really start helping solve and push those boundaries in a scientific way without, you know, coming up with its own physics that don't exist?
hallucinating.
Yeah, yeah, confidently.
It's that part for me where, okay, so going back to tools that I use, so I do use Windsurf a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's great at terraforming, in my opinion. I've gotten to the point in my sandbox because I love creating a safe space for myself to break things safely,
Hmm. Hmm.
tear them apart, rebuild them back together. That's how I learn best.
Hmm.
So, my chaotic self, I have been letting Windsurf handle Git commands, so like
Hmm.
pushing to my repo and all that kind of stuff. And it'll confidently tell me that, it's going to rebase something or something, or try to promote to the next environment. And I go, this is a protected branch. It's not going to let you do that.
Right.
Like, I know this. I know
Hmm.
it's going to cause some chaos in the repo. And I'll say that, to Windsurf. And using right now in Windsurf when I'm coding, I like to use Gemini Pro at the
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm.
Telling Gemini inside of Windsurf, I'm like, that's not gonna work. Like, are you not concerned about XYZ? And confidently it'll say, oh yeah, I've thought about that and it'll be fine. Like, it's not gonna be an
Right.
issue, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I'll hit the button just to see, and then sure enough, it'll
Yeah.
fail. But and it'll
And then it
go,
apologizes.
yeah, I don't understand why that happened. This must be so frustrating. Apologies. So yeah, it's the hallucinating with confidence for me that
Hmm.
will have me chuckling at
Yeah.
times.
Right. Right.
So, have there been like any frameworks or governance models that you see that are most effective for balancing innovation and compliance?
Hmm. I, you know, if you had asked me that a few months ago, I'd say, yeah, there's the NIST framework. There's the AI, you know, work in the European Union or in Singapore. Um, but the technology has moved so far past that. where something like half of the data on the internet is now AI generated. And so the question of really, what do you do when you've got so much of your own data that's AI generated, and how does that governance work? I think that there has to be frameworks, and I don't know if they're AI generated frameworks for the governance over AI data, but then there's guardrails. There's the guardrails of privacy, PII data, financial reporting. That's something that the humans have to be able to sign off on, because again, AI doesn't hold the accountability. It's the users of the AI that hold the accountability.
Yes. And that reminded me of something else that I heard during the conference this week when it comes to getting better at cyber security attacks and
Hmm.
ransomware. And the fact that there's so many different companies, organizations, industries where the messaging that I'm hearing these days isn't a fact of if a cyber
Hmm.
attack happens,
Yeah,
if ransomware
yeah.
happens, it's
When?
when and
Yeah,
how often,
yeah.
and can you recover quickly. And one of the things, I was doing a panel and someone had made a comment, and I ended up asking the question to the panel was, you know what, it sounds like we're also going to have to start protecting against AI itself, because we're starting to have AI agents that we let loose
Hmm.
into production.
Yeah.
It's like the very thing we might be protecting against may not be against other people.
It might be against AI, absolutely.
Exactly. And I was just
Yeah.
like, boy.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you really do need to run at the speed of AI, which means you need an AI that's going to help you with those protections, right?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. And so when you look across industries like FSI and the kinds of workflows that are ready for AI, which ones would you call out need to definitely have that human touch?
Hmm. I think anything that could crash the market and break the trading,
Mm.
the trading guardrails. Um, but those are already automations that are in those systems. Um, I think that basically the decision making, the final decision making and approvals have to be from humans. And that's at every level. There's AI agents that can help you pick stocks, um, but it's your credit card. And so the
Yeah.
question is really, who's going to make that final decision, and how much trust are you willing to give it? How much risk are you willing to take? Um, I think the places where the analytics have been amazing in FSI has always been quants, modeling, risk assessment, risk modeling. But there are some governance questions when you're looking at assigning FICO scores or deciding whether somebody gets a mortgage or not. So
Oh,
there's limits of what's permissible in that world, that sometimes you just have to leave that out, and tell the AI, don't consider those things, because if it's found that you considered those things, then you're actually looking at different kinds of fines and violations.
mm,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
yeah. Now, I mean, it's what's interesting about it is there's the risk and opportunity of moving fast and being willing to experience those breaks, versus the economic downside. And so there's
Yeah.
probably people looking at those trade-offs, but at the end of the day, the do no harm principle is, I think, one of those areas that especially finance and healthcare and some of the other systems that are in conflict theaters, all of those end up having some ethical guardrails that go in there as well.
Here's a fun one.
Hmm.
What's one lesson you wish every exec understood before launching their next AI initiative.
Oh, oh, if you don't, if the data is not your data,
Mm,
the AI is not going to give you answers relative to your business. And you have to get the data in a way that the AI can do something. And data is in oh gosh, we've been looking at data scientists and cleaning things up. And in fact, one of the reasons that POCs work and scale doesn't is because when you're doing a POC on AI, you've got data scientists cleansing and prepping the data and making sure the data is good. Guess what? Your enterprise data is not. And so
yeah,
I think that the big question is, how are you going to deal with those data systems? How are you going to modernize it? How are you going to interconnect it? What's the governance over that? Instead of just saying, give me the answers,
yeah,
it's really that, how do we make those smart connections between our data systems, and deal with variability that comes from having really, really old, sometimes not relevant entries, and
yeah,
really understanding, maybe it's a smaller sample, maybe it's cut specific ways, but I think that just if they would focus on the data instead of just what hardware a model happens to run on, they will get so much better results. I mean, I've heard so many executives have boxes of GPUs they can't power or they can't utilize because they didn't think about that data step, the preparation, the
yeah.
readiness, and how are we going to manage that, making it better. um, there's also synthetic data prep. So how do you,
Yep.
can you take a good data set that you did for a POC and use synthetic methods where you can generate more, and so you've got enough that's closer to what the business needs without completely disrupting your data. So I think that's the one place that I just, please, it doesn't, I mean, buy what you want to run the models. That's great. But it's not going to give you the ROI unless it actually connects to what your business really is doing, and
Yes,
to your
and
business history.
exactly. And I think that is very key and spot on.
Hmm.
Like, absolutely. So, from reading some of your articles, what I take away from them is that it's not about racing ahead,
Hmm.
it's about unlocking the automation that matters.
Yeah.
And so it kind of lends to the question of, so what does matter? And if doing AI isn't the goal anymore, then
Hmm.
what is? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, AI is a tool to do more. And so I think it's like, how do I use this tool to unleash things that I can't do myself? I mean, we're looking at fewer and fewer people all over the industry, and yet those same work remains. So what
Yeah.
can you do that unleashes machines' capability so that you're not just kind of doing some of these work through low-level taskmasters,
Yeah.
so I think that that's one area, like going back to the research assistants. You know, what that will do with analysts, it basically means that they'll be gathering data, and then they'll be helping with judgment. And the analysts and consultants that have implemented have been practitioners in businesses. They'll have the judgment. The ones who are simply doing quant analysis and research analysis and pivot tables on numbers, they're not going to have the judgment because they won't have actually worked in the business. So,
Yeah.
how do you get that judgment? Well, maybe you go do a business instead of consulting. So, um, there's just so many things changing all at once right now on so many different parts of the market. Um, but those automations for things that you used to do manually, that's a basic start.
Yeah. That's pretty much how I tend to always get started at the moment. And it takes me back to my days of first learning how to use Terraform
Hmm.
to quickly build things over and over. I'm taking that same principle when it comes to AI and creating an AI tool or agent or whatever, whenever I'm working on those kind of things, is I have to first stop and think, okay, am I making my work life easier somehow?
Hmm.
like what is like, is it something that I'm doing where I'm automating a process that I do manually over and over, stuff like that. And if it doesn't even check that checkbox, that's when I really have to stop and be like, okay, what are we doing this for? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, you can build great Rube Goldbergs. I mean, the tools are all
Yeah,
there,
exactly.
but it, you know, going 20 miles journey on a journey that is really just 5 because you could do it easier. In fact, I had somebody tell me this morning, um, for XYZ, I don't do prompts because it takes me 10 minutes to figure out the prompt and it takes me,
Yeah.
5 minutes to actually write the speaker notes or whatever. So I think that's just a judgment call, and you can only have judgment if you have your hands on it.